Do you like my outfit? It's giving very like cult leader. Hi everyone, today I'm showing you how to make a granny square balaclava. This is actually a really cool project because I'm using alpaca yarn today and I'm actually going to introduce you to the alpacas that I'm using to make this balaclava. So I'm using a really dark brown. It reads very black. This is from an alpaca named Iona. She's a very short, very little girl. She's a little emo and she loves to be outside in the rain. And then I'm also using a white yarn today, and my white yarn is from an alpaca named Juno. He's actually a pretty large alpaca and he is just such a little snuggle bug and he loves snacks and treats and leaves and anything edible. Alpaca fiber is actually 8 times warmer than sheep's wool and it's 3 times softer than cashmere. And if you don't happen to have alpaca yarn on hand, this pattern is very customizable to any yarn, any hook size you want to use. And now I'll just tell you the ingredients for this pattern.
For this project, I'm using a 3.5 millimeter crochet hook. And then here are my 2 yarns. This is a yarn from Iona. As you can see, the alpaca yarn is pretty thin. And then here is the white yarn that I'm using from Juno. Also, it's a pretty thin yarn. Let's just talk about the granny squares for a hot second because you can really use whatever yarn and hook you want. I am making 8 granny squares and each granny square is 7 by 7 inches. So I started my first row with the white yarn and then I alternated colors for each row. So altogether I have 10 rows and I ended my granny square with my dark brown yarn. Alright, so here's how I change colors between the rows. So I start off with a slip knot and then I like to choose a different corner than the one that I last ended on. And then I put my hook through that corner and that's when I pick up my slip knot and then I pull it through that corner. Then I chain 3 and that starts the new row with a new color. I want this piece to have minimal holes for maximum warmth, you know? So after each cluster set, I did no chains. I just moved on to the next set. And also for each corner, typically you would chain 2 in between each cluster set. But for this granny square, I just chained 1 for the exact same reason. So for finishing each row for the granny squares, I chain 1 and then I slip stitch into the 3rd chain on that initial chain 3 that started the row. And then I chain 1 just to secure the end, cut the yarn, and pull the rest of the yarn through. And then I will be selling this balaclava, so I'm trying to work super neat by weaving in my ends before I start the next row. I'm trying to better myself, people. We're trying to be nice and neat and let the Virgo energy come through, all right? Okay, so just to reiterate, I am making 8 granny squares. Each granny square I'm making is 10 rows. If you're using a different yarn or a different hook, each square is 7 by 7 inches. So you can still follow along. Alright, so after doing all the granny squares, it's time to assemble the balaclava. So as you can see, I've arranged my squares in a sort of pyramid shape. So I have 4 squares on the bottom, and then I have 3 granny squares on the middle tier, and then I have 1 granny square on top. And as you can see for the middle tier, the squares are not perfectly aligned with the bottom tier. So I want the center of the middle squares to line up with the edges of the bottom squares. Capiche? So I am going to seam this pyramid together just like this, and I like to use a flat slip stitch for seaming, but you are welcome to seam however you like. So now that I have my pyramid all seamed up and ready to go, it's time to form the balaclava. Just a little reminder before we go forward, make sure all of your seams are on the same side. Okay, so to form the top of the balaclava, I'm going to seam the top single square with the 2 end squares that you see in the middle of the pyramid. So as you can see, I'm kind of folding over the top single square and I'm touching it to the corner of the middle squares that I'm going to seam together. And I'm going to do the exact same thing to the other side. Hopefully the visual is a little better than my explanation. So after seaming both sides, we kind of have this like Assassin's Creed like little hood shape starting to form. So the next and final part that we have to seam is the bottom part of the balaclava. I'm folding up the bottom tier so it meets in the middle. And then I'm seaming just those two granny squares together from the bottom tier.
Okay, let's try this on. This is cute. Yeah, I like this. Okay, this is very cute. I'm gonna just add a trim around the face portion so it's a little more snug, you know what I mean? Okay, cool, let's do the trim right now. I think I'm gonna do the trim in white because I'm running out of black.
So now it's time to do the trim around the face, and when I do this, I do not have the balaclava inside out anymore. I have it right side in. So to start off this trim, I do a little slip knot and I attach the yarn like how I attached it when I'm changing colors on a granny square. Also, I like to pick a spot kind of on the side that's not like right in the center of the face. So after I attach my yarn, I'm going to chain 7. And then I'm going to single crochet down the row. So each row should be 6 stitches long, which isn't that much to count, so it's good to check in every once in a while when you're crocheting. So when I get to the bottom of the row, I'm going to slip stitch 3 times into the granny squares. So then when I turn my work, I'm going to skip over those 3 slip stitches, and then I'm just going to back loop only single crochet up the row. When I get up the row, I'm going to chain 1, turn my work, and back loop only single crochet down my row. When I get to the bottom, I'll slip stitch thrice and then repeat what I just did by skipping those 3 slip stitches and back loop only single crocheting up the row again. And I will continue doing that until I've made it all around my little face hole. And when I make it back to the beginning where I started, I will do a slip stitch seam and I will seam both ends of my trim together. But I did forget to film that part, so my bad. Just try your best, or, seam it together however you would like to. Then after this, I'm just weaving in whatever ends I need to weave in, and here's the final product. Okay, final thoughts. I'm so obsessed with this. It's so cozy, it's so warm. I think it looks so just like really cool and really chic, and I'm so happy that I got to share this with you and share these alpacas with you guys as well. And I'm really sad that I have to sell this one, so I'm probably, thank you. So I'm probably gonna make myself another one just for me. And I'm just happy that I got to share these alpacas with you guys and share how amazing alpacas are. Bye.